Joining me now with her reaction is Carol Roth, former investment banker and author of the book, The War on Small Business. Carol, great to see you tonight. Disney, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Okay, I love the who, but are investors going to love the fact that Iger is back?
Well, we got the Battle of the Bobs and the House of the Mouse. That sounds like a movie that Disney could actually produce, Brian. Look, this was actually not a surprise to me. Bob Iger is arguably the greatest CEO in history. He created more than $200 billion in shareholder value during his tenure. And if you can believe it, Bob Chapek destroyed about half of that during his tenure. So the idea that there was going to be a shakeup isn't exactly a surprise. And the only thing that Bob Iger didn't do well was putting a successor into place. So I think that the market is going to be happy, at least in the short term, but they need to really figure out who is the long-term solution, because as much as everybody loves Bob, this is his second stint. I know Howard Schultz went for a third at Starbucks, but I don't think that's going to happen this time around.
You know, there are a lot of new problems at Disney that I'm not sure were there or in as big a way the last time that Iger was there. You think about the cultural issue, you think about that core market of families wondering if Disney is now run by activists for activists, or if it's actually a company that wants to delight families. Do you think he has the capacity to address those deeper kind of woke cultural issues, or is he just going to save that for the next guy?
I don't think that there is going to be a proactive addressing on it. I think what he is probably going to say, read between the lines, is that he's back to focus on realigning the business and getting it back to where it needs to be. So perhaps in not addressing it, it does kind of tell you what his thoughts are, but I can't imagine that that's going to be a front and centerpiece on either direction from him. I think he wants to get back to the nuts and bolts. And obviously, you know, other things have shifted with the business, things like streaming, which I think is a short-term, not necessarily a long-term shift, and Disney's well positioned for. But like you said, he's got a lot to work through right now. And
his biggest job is to find his replacement. And we've seen that's probably the worst thing that he did in his tenure. We'll see if he's any better at it now. Carol, stay right there. I'm going to come back to you in just a second. Meantime, the bill comes due. Court filings reveal the extent of the financial catastrophe resulting from Sam Bankman-Fried's mismanagement of crypto giant FTX, showing the company owes billions in debt to its creditors. Revelations come as the company faces a bankruptcy hearing tomorrow. Kelly O'Grady joins us from Los Angeles with more. Kelly.
Well, good to see you, Brian. So many of the biggest funds have completely written off their investments in FTX, and that court filing this weekend is painting a picture of just how much money could be lost. Now, the top 10 investors alone represent roughly $1.5 billion in claims, nearly $3.1 billion owed to the top 50 creditors, and investments on that list range from $20 million to over $200 million each. But that doesn't account for the remaining other 1 million creditors. I mean, some customers put in $10,000 or $20,000, they too may lose everything.
Your show is looking at the top 50, but there are potentially 1 million, much smaller investors, and proportionally, they're the ones that are really going to get hurt. A lot of young people, FTX heavily, as does most crypto, heavily market to young people at sporting events, etc.
For creditors hoping to recapture those lost funds, the outlook is grim. Court filings reveal just $564 million of that less than $1 billion that has been recovered so far is even liquid. The company now pursuing a potential sale of assets to garner more cash. Often in these cases, though, that can lead to a fire sale. I mean, we're already seeing the crypto industry feeling the impact of these shockwaves, so these assets may be significantly undervalued in any sale that takes place. Now, tomorrow is an important day. In addition to the creditors mentioned, the Bahamian government is seeking to lay a claim to those funds as well. And what the judge decides will determine where the case takes place going forward and which creditors may take precedence. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, Carol, I want you to come back in on this. I've really enjoyed your takes on this. Follow you on Twitter on it all the time. Before I go there, though, I want to ask you this. Do you think that investors get, what percent of their money do you think they get back? I mean, is it going to be just a pittance here, or do you think that somehow we're going to find assets? It sounds like FTX didn't even know how many bank accounts it had. What's your projection for how much of this money ever gets recovered?
So I think it depends on recover for who, the creditors, the customers who put money in versus the investors in FTX are in very different positions. And so I think that the folks who are customers who had their money squandered probably have a better position. John Ray did a great job in terms of Enron of recovering more funds than were expected. That being said, it's not going to be dollar for dollar likely. And the bigger issue for these folks is it's going to take a long time. So this is something that potentially could be years before it is put to bed and they go down all the different routes to get some of that money back.
So talk about the ripple effects of this. I get a lot of people asking me, I don't have any money in FTX. I don't have any money in crypto, but I didn't have any money in Lehman either, but I'm really concerned this is going to spill over. Carol, what do you think? Is this going to be fairly contained to people who had a stake with FTX or meaningfully in that sort of ecosystem, or could this spill in a bigger way?
So I think it spills in a bigger way, Brian, but not necessarily the way that you're thinking. I think that this leads to a call for tighter regulation on crypto. And then I think what comes from that is that Congress needs to approve a central bank digital currency from the Fed. There's no way to put that forth, a retail one, without approval. I think something like that gets snuck in under the guise of, we're regulating crypto. It allows the Fed to have a programmable currency and changes our economic freedom profile. So I feel like that is the biggest possible contagion, and the way that it can impact you and me and other folks who aren't necessarily involved in crypto. We need to keep a very tight eye on this, and our legislators, those GOP members who retook the House, they need to be focused. They cannot let this happen.
Well, see, that's my concern, because if you look at, and this is a great point you made, you look at this whole episode, Sam Bankman-Fried, he's not running to find a corner where nobody's watching him. He's running right at regulators. He's running right at politicians and saying, here I am, okay, I want to be right on your radar screen. And obviously, he's trying to buy influence to write the rules his way. Is that what's going to happen any way you slice it? Because it is so hard to keep an eye on this industry. And do you really trust the Fed at the end of the day to manage this,
No.
Carol? I mean, do you have hope here?
I don't trust the Fed on anything, Brian. They have messed up every single thing that they've done. All of the issues that we're facing are on the back of the Fed. The worst possible thing that happens is that they get more control and more centralization over the money. So no, there is absolutely no trust. And I think that's why, with everything being so confusing and so opaque, it's really important for us to keep our eyes on the prize. And, whatever happens with crypto, there is going to be regulation. They don't want to give up that power, but the CBDC, those are the letters you need to stay focused on, because those are the ones that are going to impact economic freedom.
Does this thing move to the U.S.? Does it get tried here? And do we get some transparency? Last question for you, Carol.
It's a flip a coin. I think that they're certainly going to try their hardest to do that, but I'm not a lawyer. I only play one on TV, Brian.
You play a lot of great things on TV, Carol. That's why we like to have you on TV. Got to leave it there. Good to see you, Carol. Take care.
You as well.